yes, thank you. First time at Google, so welcome.
Thank you. This is amazing.
So tell us a little bit how you got started on your blog.
Well, my husband John and I started the blog in 2012. I had been blogging kind of in another space or on another website for a couple of years, and it just never really did well. It was kind of a lifestyle blog, and it was kind of my training wheels. And I started to post more recipes, and people really started to resonate with that. And so once we kind of figured out what was working and what wasn't working with that blog, I just kind of came up with the idea to make a blog that kind of represented the way that I cooked at home, which is extremely simple. I'm kind of lazy, kind of impatient, as most people are. And most of the times I would go to a food blog and I would love the photo, love the idea, and I would see ingredients that I could never find, and it took 2 hours and I just was never going to make it. And so that's kind of the heart of our blog. That's where it came from. And the reason that we decided to call it Minimalist Baker is because we were also getting really into like simple living and minimalism at the time. And I have a sweet tooth, so that's kind of where the name came from. And I think that people are drawn to websites that they know what the message is right away when they come. Like, you don't want to have to search to find out what this person is about, which is why we decided to make all the recipes 10 ingredients or less, 30 minutes or less, or one bowl. And that's
huge.
Truly how I cook when I make us dinners. So so we've been doing it now for 4 years, full-time for 3 years, and John does all the techie design Google things. And
John's here with us today, too. Say hi, John.
Hey.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So your new book is specifically focused in that space.
Yes. So the book, basically our readers started asking us for something that they could get food on, like cook from, that didn't require an iPad or their iPhone out. And so we've been doing that we started working on that in early 2015. And it's called Minimalist Baker's Everyday Cooking. And I kind of wanted it to be a collection of breakfast, lunch, dinner, sides, desserts, so that it truly is kind of covers all the bases in terms of, what you would want to cook from your kitchen on an everyday basis. So.
Great. And we're going to try a couple of those recipes today.
Yes.
So what are we going to have?
So we're going to try 2 recipes. The first one is a Southwest sweet potato black bean dip. It's good for, you guys do sports? Do you guys watch sporting events? It'd be really great for that. We don't watch sports, but we like dips. And
also
then,
fine.
Yeah.
Sports not required.
Yeah. And that one, I believe, comes together in like 30 minutes. Yes. And it's gluten-free, very, very simple. And then the other one is a butternut squash pasta. There are so many ways that you can make alternative sauces. If you're dairy-free, if you're vegan, I have a lactose intolerance. So that's kind of why I started experimenting with alternative sauces, and I didn't write the book on that. This is kind of like my inspired version, and I actually have since created more sauce recipes that I gravitate more toward, but this one is excellent for fall, and you get a whole serving of vegetables with your pasta, so it's kind of nice base.
And you do quite a bit of vegan cooking as well.
Yeah, that's become the focus for the blog because I'm lactose intolerant, and I was mostly eating vegetarian anyways, and I love experimenting with egg-free and dairy-free baking. That's kind of has become the focus for the blog, and most people know us for vegan, gluten-free things.
Fabulous. Yeah. Well, let's go.
Okay, let's do it. So we're going to start with the dip. And kind of the first thing you want to do, make sure you've rinsed off your sweet potato, which I assume they have.
Absolutely can confirm sweet potato is clean.
Yeah. And you're just going to you don't have to remove the skin or anything. Just chop it up. You're just going to want to kind of cut it into bite-sized cubes, being very careful, obviously. I have accidentally cut myself before.
I think if you haven't accidentally cut yourself, you're not cooking enough.
You're like not the real deal.
My chef teammates tell me a good cut is your first real badge of honor in a kitchen.
Yeah,
I'm quite a chicken, and I try to avoid it, but they tell me it makes you really super legit. So feel safe in that.
Yeah, John usually comes down to check on all my injuries during the day. Like, I burned myself again. He's like, stop doing that. It's like, it's part of the game.
Badges of honor.
Badges of honor. Yeah. So I think I kind of learned early on that there is a big difference especially with sweet potatoes when it comes to organic and non-organic. The flavor And the texture of organic sweet potatoes is immeasurably better than non-organic, and I'm sure you're all very smart, intelligent people, and you probably know that organic produce is better, but just for the sheer sake of flavor, organic sweet potatoes are so much better, and you don't have to add as much, oil and salt and sweetener to them because they're just naturally already tasting a lot better.
Are there other produce items you feel strongly are significantly better from a taste perspective when organic?
I think most of the squashes are, actually. I can usually tell a big difference with apples and strawberries, especially. Just, things that are in season are going to taste better as well. But mostly I think the biggest one has been sweet potatoes, actually. So all you're going to do is just drizzle on a little bit of cooking oil. I usually use melted coconut oil at home because it's a really nice source of healthy fats. And then all you're going to season these with is a little bit of salt and maple syrup just to kind of bring out their sweetness a little bit more. Just drizzle that on.
Now our flat top just wants to talk to you for a second.
Oh, sorry there.
It's supposed to be a safety feature. It's most often an annoyance feature, I can say from personal experience.
And then this is just cumin, chili powder, and cinnamon, which enhances the flavor even more, adds a little bit of spice.
So a little bit of salty, sweet, savory spice mixed. Love it.
You don't really have to add a lot to sweet potatoes because they are already so delicious, but this just kind of enhances their flavor and makes them pop in the actual dip. So you're going to roast these for about 20 minutes at 375 or just until they're tender. Because we don't have that much time, we already have some roasted.
Through the magic of preparation.
Sweet potatoes. Wow, we did it, you guys.
They came out perfectly. I'm so impressed.
I mean, I didn't even do this, so I can't take the credit. But yeah, essentially the rest of the dip is very simple. I'm going to go ahead and put these ingredients in here, and then we'll whip up the sauce. This is just fresh corn. You can also use canned corn if you can't find a whole corn on the cob. And then this is just diced red onion, black beans. You could also use pinto beans or other beans, or if you don't like beans, quinoa would actually be an excellent substitution. And then just a little bit of fresh cilantro. So that makes up the bulk of, can I set things on here?
Sure.
Okay. It might be.
If it beeps, we'll just tell it to stop.
Yeah. Oh, I think I will actually use this bowl for the sauce. So we are going to, essentially the sauce is just a slightly saucier guacamole. And I kind of like to have the avocado and then cut it in cubes so it smashes up a lot easier. Usually if you knock it, it comes off. Make sure you don't cut your hand. That would not be good. Yeah. I don't think I want that another badge of honor at Google today on camera. So once it's cubed, you can just kind of scoop it out like so. You can be fancy and use a potato masher. I like just using a fork because I think it's faster. And you can usually tell if the avocado is ripe. Obviously, it's soft, but also when you buy it, there's usually a little, I don't know what it's called, stem at the top. And if you take it off and it's green, that means it's still fresh and it's going to be good, because sometimes you open avocado and it's brown and it just ruins your day, you know?
And that can also help you avoid squeezing them so everyone else who comes through doesn't get bruised up avocados.
Yeah. So you're just going to mash up your avocado. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can actually, if you like kind of the chunkier guacamole texture, you could just leave a lot of it whole. And so, yeah, we're also going to be adding some lime juice. I have a fancy juicer at home, but before I had a juicer, I just kind of stuck a fork in there and juiced it out like this. It just adds a little bit of acidity to the dip since we have quite a bit of sweetness going on with the sweet potatoes. It also helps keep the avocado from browning. Okay, and then we are also just going to add a pinch of salt and a little bit of olive oil just to thin it out. If you try and avoid fats, that's optional, you don't have to. And then just a tiny bit more of, you can use agave nectar here or just maple syrup. I think it just kind of, I don't know, in most of the sauces that I make, I like to have a acidity and saltiness and a little bit of sweetness, which is why I like adding the maple syrup in there. So you can just kind of taste as you go, but this is looking just about right. And now we're just going to, oh, I lost my mixing spoons. Don't know where this is.
Certain we have more.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. And you can make this dip ahead of time. It would actually be, I think the flavor kind of gets better the longer it marinates. Once it's kind of mixed together, you can taste it and see if it needs more lime juice, more salt, more maple syrup. I'm usually adding more of all these things because I like big, flavorful dishes. And then we're just going to finish it with a little bit more fresh cilantro, just kind of for some more color. And that's essentially it. I'm just going to scoop some into my serving dish here.
Cilantro is sometimes a controversial ingredient here at Google, as many people, I think in general, have a reaction in a bad way to the taste. Is there another herb you might recommend or another garnish you might play with if you, say, wanted to avoid cilantro?
Yeah, John doesn't like cilantro, so I know the struggle is real in our house.
It's real here.
How many people don't like cilantro here? Okay, so all right. Know how to throw food out later. You could easily just leave out cilantro. To be honest, it's not a key ingredient. You could also use parsley. Mint might actually add a nice flavor. Really, kind of whatever you have on hand. But if you have like an adversity to cilantro, you might not like the taste of other herbs as well. Like maybe parsley would be too similar. So maybe just leave it out if it's not for you.
So feel free to leave it out. Or as we tried to do here, you could put it on the side, and then your guests could perhaps add it themselves.
Yeah. So, oh, well, it's in the dip, so sorry about that, guys. We already mixed it.
Totally fine.
So you can serve that. Actually, I just made this for a friend yesterday, and she just ate it like a burrito bowl with a fork, but usually I serve it with chips. That's
yum.
That's our
Looks
first
amazing
recipe.
to me.
Okay, so pasta, shall we?
Yeah.
So, okay, how many of you guys have made a vegan like cheese sauce? Oh, you guys are
experts.
Okay, so I know like what I'm working with here. Okay, so personally, I like to use kind of like the cheaper almond milk that you get at the store, because if you get too high of quality of almond milk, the flavor of the almonds is way too strong. I kind of like using the cheapo ones that, like are $1 a carton, because they're kind of mostly water. But for kind of the sake of showing you guys what a nut milk looks like, I sometimes make my own at home. It is quite simple. You basically can just make your own at home, and that way you can control how much water's in it, and you can control the flavor, and you don't have to add sweeteners, which oftentimes brands do. So this is just 1 cup of soaked almonds. You can soak them overnight in cold water, or if you're in a hurry, which I usually am because I forget, you can just pour really hot water over them, let them soak for an hour, and they're good to go. And this is 5 cups of filtered water. And it's going to get very loud. There we go. Whoa. There we go. So normally I would let that go for about a minute or two. Really, the longer you blend your nut milks, the more kind of meat you're going to get out of it, and the creamier your sauces are going to be. And so, but for the sake of time, I will go ahead and pour it out. Usually what I do is, you can buy nut milk bags. Do you guys know what those are? No? Okay. You guys are so cool. I don't actually have a nut melt bag, so I'm not that fancy. I just put like a really thin, clean towel over a mixing bowl and just pour it over. But today we're going to use this kind of sieve contraption here. And you're essentially just trying to get out any of the extra bits of almonds that may be left behind, because that makes your nut milk taste gritty, and that's not what we want. So you can kind of at this stage, or when you're blending, you can add dates to sweeten or maple syrup, or add vanilla if you want to have like vanilla almond milk. But since we're going to be making a savory sauce today, you don't really want any of that extra sweetness. And of course, you can use other nuts as well. I think hazelnuts would be great. You can make oat milk. You can make hemp seed milk. It's the same general principle.
So similar methodology, different root ingredient.
Yeah. You don't need to soak things like oats for as long as nuts, just because nuts are kind of hard, and you need to soak them to open them up and get the flavor out. So yeah, and then you have about 4 to 5 cups of almond milk, and that will keep in the fridge for a few days. I think I'm just going to set this over here.
I feel incredibly lazy for purchasing almond milk if it's really that easy.
I mean, I still purchase almond milk. I think that it's nice to know how to make it, because I honestly think the taste is better. But you know, for the average person who's working all day and you need to go home at night, like, you don't need to be making your own if you don't want to. Okay, so do you guys know how to cut up butternut squashes? Yes? Have you guys done that? It's dangerous.
It's super dangerous.
I watched it.
If you have tips, I would love it.
I watched a YouTube video like 3 times before I attempted it, so I didn't hurt myself. Butternut squash is just pretty firm, and so they're kind of difficult to peel. But essentially, all you want to do is cut off the top and the bottom, so you have a stable base. And then I also like to cut off the bulb from the kind of skinny top part. And then you want to peel it, which you can do with a vegetable peeler. I've never used this one, so we'll see how this goes. I actually kind of just prefer using the knife. I think it's a lot easier. You have more control. It's butternut squash, I think, is the most difficult, but I think it's also equally difficult to do pumpkin sometimes. But the more you do it, it's so much, the easier it gets, and it's not that difficult. And I use butternut squash a lot during the fall, kind of when it's in season and really fresh. And then you just want to scoop out the seeds, which I will attempt to do with a spoon. But you can also do this with kind of like a melon baller. That might actually be easier.
Perhaps more robust.
That might work a little bit better. Yeah, you're essentially just trying to get all of the seeds out. And there's a lot of seeds, so I might actually just do half. You actually only need 2 cups of cubed butternut squash for this. If you're in a super big hurry, like I was yesterday, you can just buy cubed butternut squash at the store. But for those of you who might get like CSA boxes, or if you just want to know kind of how to do it, it is nice to know that it's very easy to do at home, and you probably save money that way as well.
Does anybody have any questions for Dana while she's diligently skinning the squash? So for our TV audience, the question is, what do you do with the almond pulp once it's strained?
You can do a lot of things with the almond pulp. You can dry it out in the oven and then add it to baked goods. For instance, like banana bread's really easy to make gluten-free. So that's what I end up doing a lot of the times, is just kind of drying it out and keeping it on hand. You can also add it just like it is to things like, say, date-based desserts, which are some of my favorite vegan desserts. Just blend up some dates, throw in the almond pulp, throw in some nuts, and roll them into balls, and they're like little energy bites. That way you're not wasting any part of the almond, which is nice. If you just dry it out in the oven, I think at just like 350 for, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes. You don't want it to start looking like burnt or brown. You just want to basically remove the moisture from it. And then you have kind of like the almond meal that you buy at the store. It has been processed slightly differently, but it's the same exact texture. And then I think that's the easiest thing you can do with it. And then you can just kind of, the way that I make things gluten-free is sub in oat flour, almond meal, and a gluten-free blend. And that usually takes the place of the all-purpose flour.
And what's your favorite gluten-free blend? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. So I have my own blend that I use on the blog, but in terms of store-bought, I really like Bob's Red Mill. Their new 1-to-1 gluten-free baking blend is pretty spot on. It has a really nice, light, airy texture, and it has a nice blend of ingredients. And yeah, that tends to be my go-to. So, does anybody else have any favorite gluten-free blends? There's always more that I haven't tried. No? Bob's? It's pretty good. They kind of have it figured out. I've also heard good things about I think it's called Cup for Cup.
Yeah, I've used that one to great effect, but certainly selectively in terms of what I'm making.
Right. Yeah, and I think that one is a little bit more pricey too. So
likely so.
There's so many great blogs now that are like just strictly gluten-free in terms of like baking, and you can go and try a million different blends. The one that I have is a pretty good all-purpose blend, but I've been trying new ones from other sites as well, and there's just like a lot of really beautiful blends out there for different purposes. Okay, so we'll just call it good. We have most of the squash cubed. And you're just gonna add a little bit of oil. Again, I would probably use coconut oil or avocado at home. A little bit of salt, and we're gonna throw it in there right along that side of the sweet potatoes. And butternut squash doesn't take that long to bake, usually only like 15 to 20 minutes, and you're just looking for a soft texture, like when you poke a fork in, it should fall out. Which we have here. Isn't that just magical? So I'm just going to saute up some garlic to add some kick to the sauce. And because we're going to be blending, and it doesn't have to be finely minced or anything, just kind of a loose chop so it gets evenly cooked. And we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil to the pan, I believe a few tablespoons. I'm like going off of memory here. There we are. I haven't tried this recipe with roasted garlic, but I would think it would pair really well with the flavors of the squash. Just gonna rinse this off. So as I'm sure most of you guys know, you aren't looking for like burnt garlic because that's an awful flavor. You're just looking for it to be slightly browned. And that should only take a couple of minutes. Kind of while that's happening, I think I will go ahead and add my squash to the blender. You don't have to have a nice high-speed blender. You could probably do this in a food processor, but I just kind of like the texture that high-speed blenders give sauces because there's like zero grittiness, which can kind of be a problem sometimes with vegan sauces. We're also going to add nutritional yeast. This is, I don't even know what nutritional yeast is. I know that it has B12 in it and it tastes like cheese. And I call it fairy dust for vegans. We're also going to be adding some salt to the sauce and a bit of pepper. And I also like to add in some vegan Parmesan cheese, which is basically just raw cashews, nutritional yeast, garlic powder, and sea salt. And it ends up tasting an incredible amount like real Parmesan cheese, and I basically put it on everything. We're also going to add a little bit of vegetable broth. If you don't have broth, you can just sub all almond milk. And an unsweetened plain almond milk. If you have a nut allergy, you could also sub rice milk. I would probably stay away from soy milk because it has kind of an intense flavor. And let's just pretend that this is perfectly...
It looks really brown from up here. You have to be close. It is really, really brown.
I would probably let it go a couple more minutes, but I kind of like the flavor of raw garlic as well, so that's fine. Depending on how much you like spicy food, I guess we'll turn this baby off.
We're good. We're good.
You can also throw in a little red pepper flake, which I usually prefer. You can also add chili garlic sauce. You don't need much of this because it's quite strong. But because the butternut squash, when it roasts up, it gets a tiny bit sweet, I just feel that it needs to be offset with something a little bit spicier. And when you're blending it, you'll kind of be able to tell how thick the sauce is getting. Right now, it's looking more of like a puree, so I'm just going to add in the rest of my almond milk and a little bit more broth. You're looking for a thick but pourable consistency. Okay, that's looking just about right. And I just realized I need the cooktop again, so.
Ta-da!
We're just trying to put it back on the stove to warm it up. It's ready as it is, but just to kind of heat it up and develop the flavors a little bit more. It is still looking a little bit thick, so I might add in just a tiny bit more of my water, or almond milk is fine too.
The color's beautiful. It's very reminiscent of beloved mac and cheese color.
Yeah, that's kind of the great thing about using vegetable purees as a base for your sauces, is because they add such a beautiful color that looks like there's actually cheese in it when there's not. So yeah, I think I'm just going to grab a little bit more water and thin it down a little bit. And you're just going to warm that up, and I'm looking for a whisk. Yeah, so you're just going to kind of heat it up, and while this is happening, cooking some pasta. I'm eating gluten-free at the moment, so I usually am going for a gluten-free pasta, which I've actually been very impressed with the quality of gluten-free pastas that you can find at the store now. It's like they're undetectably gluten-free, which is great.
That's big progress.
It is big progress.
Do you have a favorite specifically from a brand perspective?
So Trader Joe's has a great organic brown rice and quinoa pasta, which I really think it doesn't taste like, I don't think it tastes much different than
Has
regular.
anybody else tried that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you like it?
Fusilli. I think it's good. If you let it sit too long, it can kind of get a little bit gummy.
It's true of regular
But
pasta
that's
too,
true of regular
though.
pasta too. And yeah, then you're just going to add in your cooked pasta and give it a toss, and you're basically good to go. The only other things I would add as a garnish here would be more vegan Parmesan cheese, because I always put more vegan Parmesan cheese on my pastas. It just adds a lot more flavor. But yeah, that's essentially it.
It smells amazing. If you can't smell it where you're sitting, I can tell you, it smells amazing.
And the sauce to pasta ratio is probably a little bit heavy, but I kind of personally like that, so thanks there. And then yeah, just kind of finish it off with some garnishes just to make it look a little bit more pretty. If you are interested in another more, I guess, I have developed more pasta sauces since this recipe that I almost like a little bit more. Just by making
Don't tell that pasta.
This pasta is wonderful and beautiful and special.
But if you had other pastas, you might like them also.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I have a lot of mac and cheese recipes on the site using different things, so you can experiment with a lot of different bases. But this is great for fall, and it's great to get a serving of vegetables with your pasta. So
I love it. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Dana? How do you balance your love of food and having to maintain a blog to promote it, and really the upkeep aspect of running a blog professionally?
Sure. Well, I genuinely do love cooking and developing recipes and eating all day, and so I think that you kind of have to have a heart for it. as I'm sure most people who do it would be able to confirm. But I also make sure that, and John always encourages me, just to make the things that I'm interested in making and the things that I love. Otherwise, it can feel really constraining. To like you want to, make a recipe that gets good search traffic. Well, like, is that actually what you get excited about in the morning? So generally, the things that I'm making during the week or the recipes that I schedule out are ones that I am really interested in trying. Like, I love mac and cheese, so how can I make that for vegans, or how can I make that taste just as good as the real thing?
So it sounds like authenticity is key. Like, you have to really love what you're doing,
right,
and not get too worried about forcing it to make it successful from a blog.
And the further you get along, like we've been doing it for 4 years, it is sometimes hard to remember that, and it can be a struggle some days, like, oh, this is a business that's not fun anymore. But it's just the two of us, and we have a lot of fun, and we love working at home, and I love cooking, so it's usually pretty easy to keep that in mind.
Do you have formal culinary training, and then how would you more specifically recommend like vegan culinary training so you don't have to your point, compromise your principles to get traditional culinary training?
I don't have traditional culinary training. I've worked in a humorous number of restaurants, like probably 20 restaurants. I've been a server and a host, and I've been also prepared food. So I did get a really good handle on cooking that way. And then watching the Food Network, honestly, just learning like, how does Emeril Lagasse chop an onion? And then I would try it. And then just a lot of experimentation. I have wondered about going to culinary school, but like you said, I don't know if I would want to do it the traditional route of having to learn how to, make butter sauces, because I personally couldn't try it, or if I'm gluten-free, I don't know if I could try like a souffle. But I did just
the butchering aspect, I imagine, would be a huge turnoff.
Yeah, but I think that more and more programs are understanding that. And I actually just spoke with a friend who went to a culinary program in New York City that was fused with nutrition, and she's vegan. And at the time, she was vegan when she went through the program, and they were able to kind of accommodate for all the different students' diets, which was very encouraging to me, because prior to that, I didn't think that you could go to culinary school without doing the traditional kind of French methods of like the butchering and the cheese sauces and souffles and those types of things. So I think that if you do some research, there are definitely options. And even in a city like Portland, where we live, there are a number of restaurants that do cooking classes, and there's businesses that are solely based around teaching people cooking. So I haven't done any research on if there's vegan options, but I'm sure there are.
Yeah, like tips for the experimentation process, and any guardrails that can help abort fails. And then how do you manage your fails?
Yeah. John is good to remind me that it's all experimentation. So he'll come down, I'm like, oh, my recipes failed today, and I had to throw them away. But
compost them, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely composting them. It's just a part of the process. I mean, I kind of see what I do as learning what doesn't work, so you kind of don't have to do that at home. But, I would say for every recipe I try, I'm testing it 2 to 3 times, and that means that the first 2 times just didn't go well. Or maybe I have something in mind and I just can't figure it out, and so I just set it aside for the day because I've tried it 5 times and it didn't work. So it's just part of the process, and hopefully you can find reliable blogs out there that kind of steer you in the right direction. And there are more and more blogs all the time specifically focusing on gluten-free cooking, plant-based cooking. So I think it's getting easier to become vegan and gluten-free.
Maybe use those as a jumping off point for experimentation.
Yeah.
That's what I do, frankly. I look at 5 different ways somebody's said to do something, and core elements that can be combined, I figure must be important. I use those. Yeah, exactly. Because I always don't want to feel constrained by it, but I also know, people like Dana are failing for us in that regard. So I try to acknowledge that and use that to my benefit.
And I think it's helpful too when you're trying to attempt something, say like a cheese sauce. This one isn't a great example of it, but the newest one on the blog, I think it's called the best gluten-free mac and cheese or vegan mac and cheese. I just went and looked at like, how does the best French chef make a cheese sauce? And then I just tried to mock that, but with vegan ingredients. I think that it's really helpful on recipes like that, where you kind of want to know what the basics are. You want to know what the foundational principles are, so that when you go to attempt it, you kind of have some frame of mind, and you're not just like throwing a bunch of stuff in the blender and hoping it turns out. I think
So you can at least follow like a methodology step.
Right.
Right.
I usually go to like Ina Garten and Alton Brown because they know and they've tested and they've tried and they're like seasoned chefs. Like that way I kind of have some type of path to go off of when I'm trying to veganize something or make it gluten-free.
Yeah, Kenji Lopez Alt is great too because he speaks really about the why behind why recipes work. And you can use that for experimentation because you won't take out those core elements, right, that are make or break. Best recommendations for someone transitioning off of dairy.
Yes. Vegan Parmesan cheese, I think, is a huge lifesaver because I used to put Parmesan cheese on everything, and then it was just stripped away, and my life was incomplete. So
when life was in shambles.
Yeah. So once I realized, like, oh, I can still make cheese sauces. I can still have pizza. Like, I bring my Parmesan shaker to the restaurants. It's very tacky. Like, oh, no, waiter, I have my own. I have my own.
I think in Portland and the Bay Area, you can get away with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, and in Portland, sometimes you go to pizza shops and they have nutritional yeast on the counter, so it makes it a lot easier.
You are not alone.
Testing out a lot of, or just trying out a lot of the different dairy alternatives, like diet cheese is great. I know some people don't love it, but I think it's kind of an acquired taste. And then the further I get away from having had cheese, I kind of forget what it was like. But
it just takes time, like any breakup.
But the good thing is that a lot of companies are putting more and more plant-based items on the market, and there's amazing vegan cheeses now that like are soft cheeses and hard cheeses that genuinely do taste like the real thing. And of course, all the different nut milks you can make. I don't miss, dairy because there's coconut milk ice cream, and I can put the Parmesan cheese on my pizza. And there's definitely some things that I miss, but I think that there are so many alternatives. So I think just finding out what are the things that you missed most about it, and then trying to find substitutions. Like I really missed ice cream, so that's why I have so many ice cream recipes on the blog. There's like 15 or something. So
sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to come to Google and especially to share this with all of us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.